The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. We will wait for a few more minutes before we begin, as some people may still be joining us. This webinar will be recorded for the future reference. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We will wait for a couple of more minutes before we begin, as some people may still be joining us. And this webinar will be recorded for the future reference. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Denis Kuramshan, and I'm Territory Manager for Europe at Dbvisit. Welcome to our webinar on Dbvisit Standby version 9 release. Our presenters today are Charmaine, Vijay, and Anton. And please note this webinar will be recorded for the future reference. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over to Charmaine.
Thank you, Dennis. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are super excited to show you some of the awesome new features in Dbvisit Standby version 9, which was released on the 31st of May 2019. We'll follow this agenda where I'll talk about some of the new features with some slides, and then we'll switch to a demo where I'll show you some of these new features. After the demo, we'll talk a little bit about stuff like licenses, upgrades, etc. And then we'll go into a Q&A session where we will try to answer as many questions as you provide to us. So while I'm busy, think of these questions and please participate. We'd love your feedback. We'd love to know what you are thinking. Okay, so without further ado, let's start with the new features. So you'll ask, or we'll ask, why version 9? And we've grouped this together in 3 main categories. First of all, we looked at enhanced user experience. It is our main goal to ensure that our user has the best possible experience, looking at keeping things simple, however, have a big punch of possibilities and features under the hood. And within this, we'll look at stuff like multi-language support, guided step-by-step tours, some visibility of command line commands in the GUI, etc. The second category is better performance. Why, if we look at a new version, not see if we can make things a little bit faster? And under this category, we looked at optimizing the create standby database process. We've also introduced graphs and charts to give us an idea of performance, either on the host or within standby itself, giving us, an idea of the log gap that is currently existing. The third new feature is extended DR functionality, which is my personal favorite, and you'll see why. Here we've got the normal activate still there in case of disaster, but we've added 2 more functions or options to do a test, and that is a normal standby read-only test, and then the perform DR test, and that is where the big stuff is happening and which I'm very excited to tell you about. So into the slides. First of all, the V9 GUI, the central console, has a new look and feel with new icons and a new layout for this enhanced experience I was talking about. So you can see, if you compare the 2 GUIs, the one on the right is the old V8, not a bad looking one, but then you'll see V9 is just smoother, slicker, and it's got a tad different naming of some of the options here. So yes, that is how we start off. Then another big one for us are the charts. Now we've got 2 big ones that we've introduced. First of all, under the managed host section, you'll get a quick view of the operating system load. Okay, so you'll be able, and I'm going to show you in the demo exactly. So this is more informational, get an idea if things are looking a little bit slow, then you've got a quick view of what's going on the operating system host. The other one is under database actions, and here you will have the opportunity or the option to get a graph of the time gap information. So the time gap between primary and standby. Next one. Here is the quick guide, which is now a new option in the right bottom corner. And you'll see, if you click on that option, it will open up quick guides for operations, 6 main operations that it will take you through this little, for example, if you choose create host, it will take you to manage hosts, that option, and it will give you a nice description of that. And if you click on manage hosts, it will actually allow you to fill in the information. So this is aimed at people who are new to the product, who doesn't know the product that much, who doesn't know Oracle that much. So it also aids as a type of training resource. And at any stage, if you want to end the guided tour, you can just click on cancel tour and it takes you out. So we've looked at these 6 top operations where it can guide you through. Very helpful, as I said, for our new customers. Then another big one for us is the introduction of alerts, which we call the alert section. So what we've done is we've made place on the right bottom side in the panel, and we've made place for alerts to pop up. Now we've introduced 2 main alerts at this stage. Obviously we'll look at adding more with time, but the 2 main ones we are going to look at, or that is configurable, is the first one is when we detect no logging operations on the primary side, because we know that is going to affect the standby database. And the other one is if the archive log gap threshold was exceeded. So once that occurs, an alert will pop up in this panel, and you will be able to go and have a look at more details regarding the alert, and you can actually then acknowledge that alert and you can add comments to it. So very nice feature as well. And then a biggie that everybody's been looking for was the multi-language support. So at the login screen, you are now able to select from a drop-down list of 5 languages. Very nifty indeed. Here I've chosen French just to give you an idea as to how it translates. Okay, over to I mentioned a more streamlined, maybe even a bit faster create standby database operation. And this is where we look at the performance. So now we've got the option, and it's by default yes, where you can have the operation of backup, transfer, and restore run in parallel, but not next to each other. So let me explain to you how this would work. When the backup is created, it is done on a file by file basis. Once the first file has completed its backup, we will continue with the second file, but we'll start transferring that first file that was finished with the backup. We will start the transfer of that already. On the standby side, once we are notified that the first file has arrived, the restore process will begin. So this process will continue where files are being backed up, transferred when ready, and restored when available on the standby server. Please do not confuse this with Oracle parallelism. It's not that. So what it does is it does have a better, faster runtime than before. You can, however, make use of the old default or the old method by clicking no, and what will happen here is the backup will finish. So file 1 to 100, all those backups, RMAN backups, backup of those files will first complete. Then all those files will all be transferred. And then once all of them are transferred and it is on standby, then only the restore will continue. Okay, so you still have that option. Then just note that you cannot have this parallel option if you're making use of transportable media. If you think about it logically, transportable media almost works the same as the old method of you obviously need to get your backup of all the files done on your media. Then you have to unmount it. You have to move it over to your standby, and then only you can restore it. So for that reason, transportable media will not work with this option. Another thing just to note, if you do make use of this option and you want to have this benefit, ensure that you've got good, solid hardware resources and a network that is capable of handling this. If your network is already saturated, if it's already struggling, you are just going to make things worse. So if you want to see that improvement, then obviously you want to make sure that you're doing it against a strong, healthy network. Okay, then let's look at another awesome feature. This one is command line interface commands that are now visible on the GUI. So if you have a look at this task here at the bottom, you'll see that it's got this little symbol greater than and an underscore next to it. So this means that this task or operation was run on the back end. So a command line operation, someone ran a sync from the command line. Previously, the GUI was not aware of this. So if you've got a team of administrators, DBA, specialists, whatever, and they are managing lots of configurations and people are running commands in the background and you've got people working on the GUI, you will always be aware of what's happening. So this is nice to have this information and be aware of what people are doing also on the back end. Okay, then, as I indicated, my personal favorite, the old activation option has now, it's got a name, it's got a new name called Disaster Recovery Actions, and so much has been done here, and it's going to make your life so much easier, believe you me. So first of all, we still have the Activate Now. Obviously, when disaster strikes, we want to be able to continue with Activate Now. Then, as I mentioned, we've got a small little test that you can do if you just want to quickly put the standby database in read-only mode and then get it back into, recovery mode. You can click this. So this option here will put it back into recovery mode. So it's a quick switch, read-only, and back to recovery mode. Okay, so it won't leave it in read-only mode. Then let's get to this big one here. Okay, so when we look at DR tests, many companies are required to run DR tests on a regular basis, which includes activating the standby database and performing a failover and then running tests on the environment. Okay, so everybody has done their tests and everything, and once they are done, management goes away. They're happy that the quarterly or half-yearly test is done. Now you sit with, with the pieces to put the standby database back. And what you had to do previously was to remove the current standby database or what was left of it and rebuild it or recreate it from scratch. So it's time consuming. It can even be complex. So yes, not something nice to sit with after everybody's made their ticks and be happy with the results. So at this stage, you will then make use of the perform DR test. So what it will do is it will allow you to take a backup of that standby database before the test. So before you activate it for the DR test, you will be given an option to make a backup, either an image copy or a backup set. Okay, then it will pause that activity, and it will say to you, are you happy? Do you want to continue activating it for this test? And you'll carry on with that, and you'll continue, and it will open it in read-write mode. Your people, your testers, everybody will jump onto it, and they'll test it and be happy and come back to you and say, okay, yes, we are done. You can do your magic. Now, what you can do is it will open up another button that says reinstate the standby database. And what it will do, it will either switch to that copy or it will restore back to it, depending on what you've chosen. And within less effort and less time, you'll have your standby database back in operation, sending and applying, going crazy, and people will think this is the best thing ever. So I'm going to show you exactly how that works. So that is the end of the slides. I'm going to go into the demo and show you what exactly I've been talking about. So first of all, let's look at the language options. So at the login screen, as I mentioned, you've got the drop-down list and you can choose your language. As I mentioned, or in my slides, I referred to French. So let's carry on with the French language. So you see that it displays everything nicely in the language that you've chosen. Just a note that if you look at some of these tasks, if you click on that, it gives you the options at the top and the bottom. It gives you in the language, but there are still references in English. And this is not a bug. This is how the information is being passed from the back end, from the Oracle database itself. There's no way we can change that. So that will still be in English, but the majority of the rest of the tasks and operations and statuses you'll pick up in the language of choice. So just to take note of that, so you don't think, but I want everything in the language. That is unfortunately not possible because we get information from the back end. Okay, so I'm going to go back to English, otherwise I'm not going to know what I'm doing, and then this will be a disaster. So let me get back in with the English language, and I will continue showing you the rest of the new features. So let's have a look at the graphs. First of all, I mentioned under Managed Hosts, you'll see that we've got these little graphs next to it. And these are the operating system load graphs. In Linux, it will be the system load, and in Windows, it will be the percentage CPU usage. And you'll get an idea as to how busy your host was or what the load was at a certain time. And you've got this awesome zoom slider that you can actually move across, and you can zoom into specific detailed data at a certain point. So it's a very nice tool to gather stats over a period. Again, please note, this is not taking over your system monitoring. It is just a good tool to see what is happening on your system. If things are a bit slower than usual, you can always refer to that and see, okay, wait, I need to go and investigate in system logs or whatever, what is going on, what happened at that time. Okay, so you'll get this for both hosts, for the primary and the standby host. Then the next area where we've included graphs is under database actions. So first of all, you'll get this indication of this red button against each of the hosts in your configuration that you're working with mainly in your database actions. So if you get the green button, it says, if you hover over it, that this host is online and it was last contacted 2 minutes ago. So it's all good. and the same with the second host. If this is for any reason red or not green, you know that there's some communication problem. You're going to have to go and check this out. Okay, and then you'll see we've got this time gap in minutes and also a time gap statistics graph. So this means there's a time gap of 55 minutes between primary and standby. And you'll see how this changes if I now manually go and send and apply logs. That should bring this back to 0 because we know that everything will be in sync. So let's apply the logs here. And whoop, there it puts it to 0. So we are in sync. Let's go and run a log gap report first. Okay, and the graph will show us what happened the last, half an hour to 45 minutes. And again, we've got the zoom slider to zoom into the specific detailed data at a certain point. And you'll see we were quite far in lag. And then once I send and apply everything, it went back to 0. So a very nice indication as to how things are looking, specifically the time lag between primary and standby. Okay, so that takes care of the graphs. Now we want to go and have a look at the alerts that I mentioned earlier. And of course, I mentioned we're looking at no logging operations. If it detects that on the primary, it will pop up an alert here. And the other one is the archive log threshold. If archive log gap threshold, if that is exceeded, and that's configurable in your DDC. Okay, so you're going to put the threshold to something, and as soon as that archive log gap threshold is reached, it will pop an alert in this pane here. So to simulate that, I've already edited the DDC, configured it. So to simulate something like that, I'm going to send a few logs and create a gap larger than 2. For example, oh, what am I doing? Oh, sorry, I'm just clicking away. Never do what I did now. Okay, click another one. Oh, sending, Charmaine, sending. Okay. We are waiting for this to pop up. Oh, did I do it again? The old fingers are too much in a hurry. So I want to create that criteria so that it is upset that it exceeded that threshold. And it pops up that alert. Ah, there you see. We eventually got there after I sorted my finger clicking out. Okay, so you have to giggle about that one. Okay, so let's have a look here. The archive log gap has exceeded the threshold of 1. Oh my goodness, it took me quite some time to get there, but we got there in the end. So if you click on this little message now, it gives you details of the alert that got popped up. Okay, and you can see here you've got a comments block place where you can put some comments in for other people. Say you're working shifts, or you're going on leave or whatever. Other people can see, oh, it's been handled, or we don't know what's going on here, or whatever. So people are aware of what is being done to address these alerts. So I'm just going to say still need to apply the logs. And we can say add the comment and then it marks it as seen as well. So it shows you that it has been acknowledged. Okay, so if it doesn't have that tick next to it, nobody has looked at it. Yes, and it's just lying there. So we've got this, and it's informative. You know exactly what's going on. So now it's taken care of, and I'm just going to go and apply all the logs that I've been trying to send over, and everything should be back to normal again. So that is the alerts. The next one is this user quick guides. Remember, this wasn't the available option in version 8. So now we've got the user quick guides, which is a interactive step-by-step help or assistance, and it's specifically aimed at people who are not that familiar with the product. We want to make it easy. We want to make it simple. And by giving this option or making this options available, people will really not be scared to get in and configure standby databases and learn from it. So what happens is, let's take, for example, the first step that you need to do when you configure a standby database. You need to introduce the primary and the standby hosts. So we say, click on the create hosts, and it takes you to manage hosts. If you remember well, when you did your first configuration in V8, this is the first thing you do. You have to go and add the host information here. So now it gives you a description of what will happen in here. If you click on this again, it takes you to the actual hosts pane. And it will say, okay, now you can actually go, and if you click on new, now you can go and fill in this information. So while it takes you through this step by step, you can actually do the configuration. So this is quite nifty. As I mentioned as well, if you get here and you're like, oh, no, I can't remember this, or, oh, I must still get all my prerequisites sorted, the network communication and all that, you can cancel the tour at any time and go back to the main menu. So no need to run through everything and now you think you're stuck and you have to see it through to the end. Very nice feature. It's going to make a lot of people's life so much easier. Okay, another one that I'd like to show you is, remember I indicated that we've got these tasks at the bottom, and you can now see the tasks that are, or operations that are being run in the back end. So I've actually started the task where I've run a sync, but I've executed the command on the command line, and it popped up this task, and you can see it's busy now. But we can see from this little symbol, this greater than underscore, that this is an indicator that this action or operation has been started on the command line. So people who work on the GUI knows, oh, there's something happening. Somebody is busy running stuff in the back end. So they are aware. Again, if you've got information available, you know what's going on around you, it makes you just so much more efficient eventually. So this is really an awesome little feature that was added for us. You can also, if you want to, go into this task history, and it will give you the table. Oh, look at my red ones where I've gone but trigger happy with the finger and clicking away. You can have a look at this CLI. This will also show you which operations or tasks were run from the command line. So you can always verify it there as well. Okay, so now we're getting to my favorite bit, and I'm very excited because, believe you me, this is making life really, really simple and easy when it comes to DR testing. So we get to the disaster recovery actions, and here we obviously, as per normal, going to choose our configuration. As mentioned, we still have our activate now, and then we've added the standby read-only test, but we've got this DR test that we must do every quarter or whatever, and it means that we have to rebuild the standby database afterwards because we are opening up that standby database in read-write. So you can't put it back into recovery mode, you need to rebuild it. So with this option, what will happen is if you click on the option Run DR Test, it will allow you now to make a backup of the standby database prior to activation. Now, this is really changing things dramatically for us. Okay, so you can tell it which type of backup you want to take. We want to take an image copy because that's a like for like. It's a direct copy of your data files. I've got a small little database, so I'm not worried about that. And I give it the place, the location where I want those files to be placed. So I'm just going to give it a standby temp. Okay, so at this stage we are saying make a backup, and then it asks you, do you want to stop the process after the backup to confirm that you would like to continue with the activation? Yes, I actually want to do it that way because then I can review, make sure I'm happy with the backup, and then continue with the activation. So it is by default, yes, you can make it no, but let's do this properly. Then we say submit. Now you can see it opens up a task here in the task panel. And if we click on it, as per usual, runs pre-checks, checks how big the database is, and it starts making a backup of the standby database. In our case, image copy, which is very quick and easy, and it will validate this backup, and then it will put this task into a paused status. So you will then be required to resume. If you're happy that the backup is good, you're happy with everything, you can then continue and say, okay, resume, you can activate the standby database now. So let's wait for the backup to finish. Okay, and then as you can see, it puts it into this little paused status, and you can see it says this task requires user action. So what you do now is you click on it. There you can see the information about your backup. And now we can say, okay, we want to proceed with the DR test. So please open the standby database, activate it now. Click on it. It makes that first task as complete, and it opens up the next task. And this task is the actual where it is now activating. So now we are activating the standby database. Once this is done, you're going to give the go to your testers and management and everybody saying, okay, there you go. The standby database has now been opened, activated. Please do your test, check, give the signatures and everything. After an hour, 2 hours, whatever, they come back to you and say, thank you very much. You can now go and rebuild the standby database. And you say, doesn't work like that anymore, because if I go to disaster recovery actions now, remember I've got a backup of the standby database. So it will then allow me, under perform DR test, it will allow me to reinstate the standby database to the status it was prior to the DR test using the backup that I've made. So if I click on reinstate, it's going to go back and see, she's got some image copies that she made just before the activation. Oh yes, there they are. Do you want to switch to these? Yes, I want to, because it's going to make it so much quicker. Don't have to do a full restore. And I click on submit. Here it opens a new task, and it will now reinstate the standby database. The task again is very informative, telling you exactly what happens behind the scenes, and you can see this is all relevant stuff to put the standby database back, and you know everything should be fine now. Now, how's that for reinstating the standby database, not having to rebuild everything from scratch? The final steps we do usually manually before we enable our schedules and say, okay, standby database is up and running again. It is shipping and applying away and all is good. We first do a manual send and apply just to make sure everything is working the way it's supposed to. Do a log app report. Show that everything is nice and synced. Management just wants to know, give me proof that it's in sync and I'm happy. You go and run a log app report, and after that you enable your scheduling and away you go. Nobody would have known that you've done a full-on DR test and got your standby database back in no time. So that concludes the demo session, showing you all the awesome features that we've introduced in version 9. You can maybe now, from the information that I've provided you, think of some questions, and please start typing them in the little panel, questions panel, and we'll look at them, after I've spoken a bit about, some follow-up things like licenses, etc. Okay, so let's kill this little thing and open up the slides, and let's have a look at the last bits. Now at this stage, we want to look at the licensing. We want to confirm that your version 8 license will not work on the version 9 software. So you're going to have to get in contact with our sales and licensing people, and they're going to issue you with a new version 9 key. Okay. Then the upgrade from version 8 to version 9 is really easy. It is fully documented and you really cannot go wrong. However, and that consists of installing over the current version 8, and then you will have to do an upgrade of the DDC and the repository. However, if you're upgrading from version 7 or even version 6, we recommend that you do a whole new installation, maybe even run it side by side, and then recreate your DDC. But if you feel that that's a little bit too complex, you're unsure, just log a ticket, and we will give you some guidelines. Then also, version 9 is available on Linux, Windows, Solaris, and AIX. So if you're running any of those operating systems, it is available on there. And then lastly, you've got a whole lot of resources available to assist you and to get familiar with these new features. You've got the user guides. We've got a nice blog that Anton wrote not too long ago. You've got the support desk where you can log tickets. We are very, responsive there. And then also you can download the trial and you can play with it. But please go out there, play with it, see how it works, ask questions. We want the feedback. And yes, just enjoy yourselves. So this concludes my bit of it, and we can go into a little question and answer session. And please shoot with those questions. We'd love to know what you're thinking. And yes.
Okay, hey Shaman. So we have a couple of questions already come in here.
Lovely.
So the first question is, can we use V9 Central Console, that's GUI, for V8 standby databases and vice versa? So to answer this question, no, we cannot, since the V9 Central Console DBV server has been modified, and so you cannot use it for your V8 V8 configurations, or V8 configurations cannot be used with the V9 Central Console. And another question we have is SSH still supported for version 9? Yes, we do support SSH for version 9 Unix configurations. That's still there. So, and then can we still open the DR for read-only purposes for like running reports? Yes, that is also still available. There's no changes to that. So another question here is, so for can a third-party monitoring system extract information from Dbvisit repository databases? The questions, we still use Dbvisit version 7.
Yep, I can. Sorry, Vijay. What I can do is I can maybe jump in here with a couple of these questions that I'm seeing coming through, which is very, very good questions. Thanks, Sean and Johan, for asking these questions. So yeah, the question Vijay is talking about here is, can you still get information out of the repository? Because when we in run Dbvisit standby, we actually store information in the repository. Now in version 7, you're specifically referring to version 7 there. So in version 7, we were using a repository that was sitting inside the Oracle environment. What we've done is we've moved that repository outside of Oracle into a small SQLite repository. It's sitting in the standby conf directory. You will notice there's a SQLite repository there, and you can browse that. You can definitely connect to that repository and get information out of it. Just be aware it's a SQLite repository. Don't try, and if you start writing things to it or messing with it too much, you are going to affect how Dbvisit standby executes. So just be aware of that. But you can query that. You can actually extract information out of that repository. So if you've got other monitoring tools and you actually want to display some information, for example, the log gap details, that's still stored there in very similar tables than what you would be familiar with in the previous versions. I've noticed there was a question from Johan around, will all these options be available in the command line interface and the CLI? And I think that you're specifically asking the question around when the discussion was around the DR options that we've introduced. And yes, all the things that we've shown, that Charmaine has shown now, it's available through the CLI. So if you are a power user using the command line interface, by all means, you can still use the CLI to do these functions. If you want to do batch operations or anything like that, again, you can still use the CLI. All those options is available to you. We have found that most people now start using the console or the GUI. So we are seeing a lot more people focusing around the GUI because it is really awesome. All the stuff that it can actually do and visually show, and things that we're going to do in the future as well. You are going to see a lot more focus on the GUI. But we still have the options available in the command line. So if you do want to use the command line, by all means you can. There's no problem doing that. Then I also noticed an interesting question there again from Sean around the the automatic startup of the databases on a system reboot. That should be possible. You can use either if you're using systemd or if you're using your init scripts, you can set it to auto start. You will run the dbvctl command with the correct parameters to start it up in the specific state that you want it in. So those options should still be available to you, and I think there is a knowledge base article that actually takes through examples on that. I think that is available. So sorry for interrupting there, Vijay. Back to you.
Thanks, Nathan. That's wonderful. So that's it. I don't see any other questions. Yeah. Do we still support version Oracle version 10 with version Dbvisit standby version 9? Yes, we do support 10G, but we have to make sure that the version, the release that you're using is 10.2.0.5. That's the recommended release that we ask you to use for if you're using Dbvisit standby version 9.
Cool. Yeah, that's a very good one to highlight, Vijay. We do. A lot of people have asked us to, what versions do we support? And as you said, 10.2.05 is what we recommend. We don't see a huge amount of people still running on 10G. Most people are on 11G and above. But we've had a few that's running on 10, and ideally, if you are running on 10, you should be on 10.2.05. Let me just see if there's other more questions coming through. Sorry, there's a few long questions coming through, so I don't want to hold you guys too long up. We will actually respond to these questions. So even if we don't get to them now, we will respond to these questions via email. Let me just quickly scan this.
Vijay, another one that's coming through is the support for 18C and 19 Oracle.
So 18C is supported for with version with 19C. It's still under review, so probably it should work, but we can work with customers who are running 19C and then maybe work with them and then move forward with the support as well.
If I'm not mistaken, it's without rack, if you can confirm.
Yes.
So,
yes. Sorry for
go ahead,
jumping in there. Yeah, so just on 19C, I'll get to Sean your next question there as well. Just on 19C, we've done testing on it. We haven't seen any issues, so we don't see any problem in supporting it. As most of you might be aware that 19C does not include rack for standard edition, so that's why 19C rack won't be supported because it doesn't exist. But it is up until 18C, so you can use rack up until 18C. But we've seen, most people running rack environments on standard edition or standard edition 2. Most people are still on standard edition. We're seeing less and less people moving to rack in the later versions. There's still a few out there, but we're seeing a lot more single instance environments. Just coming back to the question, there's a question around you've got large redo logs, and when you do graceful switchover, you had to perform manual steps to rebuild them with smaller sizes before performing the graceful switchover. Otherwise, it can take hours. Now, you're not specifying the version there, so depending on the version that you're using, when you're performing a graceful switchover, now graceful switchover is to provide you with a consistent switch so that you don't lose data. So we have to copy at least the current redo log from the primary through to the standby during this process. And there's a lot of other things that's happening, but that's one of the key things that happens. And if your redo logs, as let's say it's 10 gigabyte in size, and your network connection can only handle 1 megabyte, megabit connection, let's say very slow connection, the time to transfer that 10 gigabit redo log, for example, will take time. And that would be the reason for a slow graceful switchover. Now, if you were running, let's say, version 7 and previous versions before that, there was actually all the redo logs would be copied, and if you had quite a lot of large redo logs, that would take time. And in the later versions, what we introduced is we actually optimize that process quite a bit. And I'm not going to get into the details into that, but we optimize that so we copy at least probably just one redo log, and depending on your environment, you can estimate the time that it will take to do a graceful switchover by copying you know, one of your redo logs, or let's say if you've got an archive log that's the same size of a redo logs, you can copy that across between the networks and you can get an idea, you know, what's going to happen. Part of the graceful switchover, we do stop and start the databases a few times, so you have to take that into account. So if you want to, you know, the best way to test it is to run a graceful switchover in a test environment that replicates your production environment. Then you can exactly see how long it will take. But if you can't, well, usually you should definitely have a test environment. Even if it's just locally, you can test and get an idea how long it will take. But in the later versions, it's definitely optimized. We have made changes in the networking layer. So in Dbvisit, we've made some performance improvements there. So you should see a bit of an improvement in that. We've already had a lot of that in version 8, but we've tweaked it a little bit more in version 9. So there's a few improvements there. But yeah, best would be is have a test in your environment and see what it's like there. But if you're using version 7 and you're going to version 9, that you'll definitely see an improvement in your graceful switchover time, definitely. Let's just see, there was one thing I wanted to highlight. You guys are actually asking very good questions, and I really appreciate that. So I actually want to extend this. If you've got any feedback on the product, we're quite excited about this new version, the languages that we've introduced, and you know, that is a very, very good feature, because now you can actually see it, you know, in the various different languages. And if you go, for example, through that and you see a piece of text that you just go, this doesn't make sense, you know, let us know. We've had you know, professional people translate it, we've had it reviewed, but you know, there's always, you know, we've had some feedback even through the beta testing where people said, maybe this piece of text, it would be good if it's something else, because this might not mean the right thing. So we do appreciate feedback, good and bad feedback. We do appreciate that. It helps us to give you a better product. So if you see anything like that, please let us know. Also around the DR test, have a play with that. It's a very, very nice feature. We're super excited about that. It now gives you the option when you do your DR tests, which hopefully should be on a regular basis, to actually run that, do backups of the standby through the product, and then you can reinstantiate those backups instead of rerunning CSD or restoring your manual backups. And if you play with the options there around doing backup sets versus image copies, you actually get some pretty interesting stuff you could potentially do there around the image copies, because it's very quick to switch to image copies. So something to kind of be aware of, and just keep an eye on that. But again, I just from my side want to say thank you to Charmaine and Vijay for doing these sessions. They ran quite a few of these in different regions, so I just want to say thank you so much. It's been awesome, and it's great for us to share a bit of you know, the version 9 with all of you. So thank you so much.
Great stuff. Thank you, Anton. Thank you, Vijay. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time. I hope you are as excited as we are about all these new features in version 9, and that you found this session to be informative. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Thanks, everyone.